positions of hopelessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America. No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America. That's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human. God damn America as long as she tries to act like she is God and she is supreme.
Okay, what's up? Hello, fuckers. I'm sorry, I have to amp up everything Mexican about me. So
Well, the What the Fuck podcast is ending, so someone needs to take on that audience name.
somebody should make it Mexican and make it called What the Fuckers. Wait, shit, he already kind of says that.
Do the Spanish version or the rest.
The Chicano version is fucker. I'm sorry to inform everyone. It's a fusion. It's a thing that me and my friend Avery also say to each other a lot. Fucker. Anyways, so hello, welcome to the show. Welcome to Pod Damn America, fuckers. I'm Jake Fucker Flores. That's Anders J. Lee.
Anders fucking Lee here.
Wow, uncharacteristically conversational today. Hi, thank you for listening. So the stuff going on in LA is going to be going on for a while, I think, and it's important in my opinion. So I'm going to not hijack the entire show with it, but it's going to be like a segment at least, because I think it's important to kind of keep, especially because I know we got listeners out here, and people outside of Los Angeles definitely need to know what's going on here if you're not here. So I'm going to just start with some on the ground stuff or some analysis of some stuff that's happening here. And because everything is connected, because we all know that, it's going to expand outward. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in the rest of the country and the rest of the world after that. But let's start off today by talking about this thing called the No Kings rally. Have you heard about this, Anders?
I have, yes. I saw that the Democrats abroad in the, obviously a response to Trump and the military parade, but the Democrats abroad held their version of it where they didn't feel comfortable in all cases saying no kings because some of them live in countries where there is royalty. So they did like no kings / dictators or no tyrants in a couple cases, which I guess that's kind of sad. Your people are still defending a non-tyrannical monarchy in the UK, for instance.
Yeah, or like not all kings. Like it has to be a hypothetical, vague king because like there's
Right.
whatever. But that really says everything about what this is. In fact, yeah, this is a good spot to start, I think, because this is both. We're gonna Murray. We're gonna both retread some well-tread territory. Let's be redundant. And we're also going to expand our thinking here. I think this is an interesting moment. It's a good moment, I think, to talk about. The well-tread territory is if you're like a leftist, right? If you've been into this shit for any number of years, you probably remember like 2016 and liberal sort of demonstrations about Trump, like the Women's March where people wore pussy hats and stuff like that. And then I don't know. A lot of people have been leftists forever. Wow, you're so fucking cool, right? A lot of people, this stuff was part of their journey toward like maybe waking up and going, wait, I don't think these fucking people are like what they say they are, right? They keep speaking on behalf of us, and yet this stuff seems kind of cheap and vague and corporate and stuff like that. The Democratic Party, oh, okay, it's like a controlled opposition thing, I don't know. I don't know where you're at, and I'm trying to make a big tent here because I think this is a moment where there are a lot of people waking up. But like there are people with literally the same signs out in some of these events, and these events are happening all over the country. That's also a reason I think this is important to talk about, because this came out of right here in Los Angeles, but it's becoming a thing where I think they're trying to like co-opt it and turn it into this big peaceful demonstration thing. But but that comes with a lot of caveats. So there are people with signs that say, if Kamala had won, we'd be all at brunch right now or whatever. That's like the classic thing that Hillary Clinton supporters said, that people went, yeah, that's the problem, right? It's not good for you to be at brunch. Gonna make this nice and easy and over explain these ideas. So if you know what I'm talking about, don't keep with me. Keep listening. I know this is well tread territory, but we need to explain to people why we all went over this and went, holy shit, that's a fucking problem, right? So the No Kings protest seems to be, from what I gather from reading about it and stuff, or the No Kings rallies or whatever. These were put on by this organization called 50501, which is like one of those vague think tanky sort of organizations, like the Lincoln Project or something, that's clearly got some kind of money behind it. George Soros literally donated to it. He donates to liberal shit. That's real, They're not like, it's not a conspiracy theory, but it is just what it is. It doesn't matter in the way that right-wing people think it matters. And they're interesting because they're part of it's not Our Revolution, it's the other one.
Indivisible?
I think so. I'll look up
their revolution.
No,
my revolution.
It's one or the other.
You say you want a revolution?
You're confusing me. So anyways, it doesn't matter, right? So they're part of this thing that basically is a liberal cause, and it like their main focus is Trump, to some extent Elon Musk, but mainly Trump. And this formed after Trump's second election, and they started doing things like the hands-off protests or whatever, and like kind of doing these like vague liberal hashtags and stuff. Hold on. Political Revolution. Okay, that's a group called Political Revolution, initially created to support Bernie Sanders' 2016 political bid, not Our Revolution, which is the PAC that Senator Bernie Sanders' 2016 campaign like turned into. And like it's kind of an interesting like thing, because it's not like the Center for American Progress or something like that that's explicitly like really against something like Bernie Sanders and on the super neoliberal side of the Democratic Party. This is more an outcome, I think, of what we saw with like the AOC Bernie Sanders like anti-oligarchy sort of thing becoming like part of the acceptable Democratic Party purview. The what do you call it, Overton window kind of shifting. 50501, I think, you should be critical of this, because it's like they put on a lot of these just vague ideological, not very radical protests and stuff like that. But they also organized like May Day in the United States this year. So there's kind of this vague like rad lib sort of like, someone who's just liberal but is almost there. They like Bernie Sanders and AOC and haven't quite seen the distinction and the problem with trying to do this stuff within the framework of the Democratic Party yet. There's a lot of that energy here. So I think what I'm going to argue is that this kind of represents like a interesting moment where there's a lot of people involved with this who probably could be radicalized. But let's talk a little bit about what happened. So obviously what's happening in LA, the protests downtown and all over the city have continued. We're about a week in at this point, and suddenly the first few days you would see calls to action to go to City Hall, and it would say ICE out of LA, right? Big fucking call to action. You just show up. That's it. And like I said on the first episode, like, there were like kind of some organizers, but they were from, unless you want to cop jacket them and completely cast them as like feds, ostensibly just organizing. Like they're just from the ground. They're from, mutual aid networks and like political organizations and stuff like that, or socialist organizations. Probably there's pretty explicit socialist messaging. So then this is the next week. The establishment has had a week to think about all this and decide, how do we get involved? How do we co-opt, right? Suddenly you see this thing called No Kings. Old people that were arguing with us a week ago that like, don't go down there, violence doesn't solve anything, now are like going to this thing because it's now being sold to them by, corporate media, the Democratic Party, fucking all their stupid little pundits on TV and stuff, as like how you protest. Yeah, we're gonna do it. We're gonna resist against Trump, right? The problem is, No Kings, like, it. First of all, it's coordinated with the police, so that's a huge problem, right?
As in, like, they get a permit, or
yeah, but I mean, like, all the other stuff had permits too. Like to organize at City Hall, you have to have a permit, which is why, like, so a lot of the protests in L.A., we'd start off at City Hall, march around. If you get shot at, people would run back to City Hall because they technically like weren't supposed to be shooting us at City Hall, even though they have now. That's out the window.
Yeah.
Every single day they've been shooting people at City Hall. They broke my friend Christian's arm, by the way. He's a friend of the show.
Damn.
And shout outs to him. If we need to raise some money for him, I'm going to put it up there, but it sounds like he has insurance and stuff like that because he's a union guy. So, but anyway, shouts out to Christian for fighting the good fight on the ground. He's a fucking warrior and didn't seem phased at all, which troubles me. But, so the way that the 50501 No Kings thing has been organized, they literally have been like using like what do you call it? Like event pages, like you would use to organize a party or a show, and asking people to RSVP to this protest. Do not do that. Right?
On like Partyful?
Something like that, yeah. Don't document yourself going to a protest where things are going to get really hairy. They have been asking people not to wear masks, right? Because those are the official rules, as they've been trying to implement laws and stuff like that to keep people from wearing masks. They present this as, whatever the justification is, like for safety or something. Clearly it is just a way to fucking subjugate us and keep us like easily identifiable because there's all these databases and stuff like that. They've been also asking people to protest peacefully. So they've been putting out infographics like the ones you see from real activists, but they say stuff like sit down and, wait to just do like be Gandhi or whatever. Sit down. There's like a sit down thing that they're trying to make happen. And, you should not do that because they will arrest you. And then what good are you then, right? Like, you should not actively be trying to get arrested. We should not be forming human walls and stuff. There is like a method to this where, you hold ground for as long as you can. And then you, like, a big thing is walk, don't run when they start shooting at us. Because you don't want to just hand them the ground. You want to make them fucking earn it. But you don't just get yourself arrested. Like, that's actually not good. So the fucking the No Kings rally though, there's okay, let me get a couple details into it before I really go off about it. So something interesting happened with it, which is that Christy Walton, who's a member of like the Waltons, the family that owns Walmart, took out an ad in the New York Times promoting it, and that has been cause for a lot of people to scrutinize it and say like, okay, this is an op, right? And that very well may be the case. However, Walmart as a company came out and clarified that they didn't condone that and that she's not like part of the company. This is just someone who's in the family. So I think this is a case of like, who was the fucking brother on Succession that like ran for office and was like a hippie?
I want to call him Cameron, but that's his name in Ferris Bueller.
Yeah. I fucking forgot. I don't know. It's been so many years at this point. But you don't have to talk about like rich families kind of have these like weird black sheep where it's like, every once in a while they're like, hey, legalize it, and everyone's like, shut up. So I think this is what that seems like, because Walmart kind of deflected this, But then, this is something really funny that happened, is that there's a MAGA response to this where a bunch of MAGA people have decided to boycott Walmart because they think Walmart is supporting this lib fucking rally. And it's one of those things where you're just like, let them all fight. Literally everyone involved here is bad, right? So, yeah, who cares? MAGA people boycott Walmart. Walmart fight a bunch of MAGA people. Like, I don't fucking care. Yeah, I don't know. So basically, my take on this though is that like there's been interesting kind of discourse around it online. It's going in a circle, and that tells you something that this is like a little interesting philosophical moment of contradiction. On the one hand, this shit is clearly a process, whether it's like an intentional conspiratorial thing where someone like Hillary Clinton is in a fucking bunker somewhere, like we are going to co-opt the movement with a bunch of graphs and screens and shit like that, or it is just a natural organic outcome of liberalism itself. It's kind of more where I'm coming from, I think. Its intention, whether it's conscious or not, is to co-opt what is happening and defang it and drive these interesting wedges. So one of them is like the idea that there are good protesters versus bad protesters, and to tell people, you know, be one of the good protesters. The bad ones deserve to get shot, right? So that's obviously something that isn't true. If you think that's true, you should watch the footage of the people on the ground. I know I talked last episode about how there's like too much, like you should be careful with footage and there's too much metadata and stuff like that. But like there's enough to document the fact that everyone is chanting peaceful protest, and getting shot by the cops. And then things happen from there if they happen, right? But they will shoot you if you protest peacefully. It does not matter. There is no distinction. When they try to police us about that and make us respectable, that's a propaganda tactic as old as time. And it's the point is to try to drive a wedge. They did this in the 60s with, you know, the idea of outside agitators and stuff like that. And they did this in the 30s with, you know, saying, oh, it's fucking communist Jews that are coming in to people aren't fighting the Ku Klux Klan. They wouldn't do that, right? It's these communist Jews, right? It doesn't matter. The anarchists that are there are organizers. They're giving people free food and stuff like that. I'm gonna keep saying this shit, but part of that is they're trying to drive that wedge, and they're also trying to sort of like, how do I put this? Like create a movement that then gets like it gets defanged a little bit. It's like here, I wrote this down, right? No Kings is going to function as a way to shepherd your liberal friends away from solidarity with us on the grounds that there are good and bad protesters. The issue that and this is the other one, the issue that it is simply Trump. This is, I think, the thing that's really kind of narrative-wise dangerous and a problem, because Karen Bass, the mayor of LA, has been saying, you know, in her messaging about this, she's trying to position herself, her and Gavin Newsom, as like the good guys because everyone hates Donald Trump and he's in charge of the federal government right now. So she's, you know, saying things like, we, you know, the LAPD is doing a fine job on their own at this. They don't need the National Guard. They don't need ICE, right? Well, there's two huge problems with that. There's a few, right? One of those things is that it's a lie because to try to portray any of this as the LAPD being in opposition with the federal government, ICE, and the National Guard is ridiculous. They are clearly coordinating together. They clearly don't exist in any opposition. This is just a case of the Democratic Party trying to frame themselves yet again as your savior from the very thing that they support, right? The cops and the military and all that stuff. They have never strayed from any of this stuff. The other thing about that is that, like, so by trying to, by trying to like make this into a Trump specific thing, and by creating this dichotomy of it being Trump versus like the local government that's doing a good job, it gets away from the fact that the problem here is by and large the police. Like ICE this is all about ICE, I know, and this is about the National Guard being there is really fucking scary. I think if I understand their role, they're only there to they're only at the federal buildings and stuff. They're only there to legally, what they can do is protect ICE and Homeland Security. They're not really on the same parts of the ground as the police. So it's not that you shouldn't be worried about that, but it's being overblown a little bit. And like the police are just the front line. They're the fucking lapdogs of this entire establishment. They don't exist in opposition to it at all. So by trying to create like this Trump, reduce this specifically to Trump, it's implying that the whole damn system isn't in question and isn't complacent, and that the fucking police aren't like the main boot on our neck. They might have bosses that are there, but they're all working together. And this is as much a protest against the fucking police as it is against Donald Trump and the federal government and the military and Homeland Security. All together, abolition is part of this, right? So, anyways, what I wanted to say about this is that there's this question of like, should we be criticizing people who go to this? Should we be going to it? Is it a co-option? And I think the answer is, if we don't do anything, it is going to become a co-option, which is kind of what happened in like 2020. They did a lot of like kind of putting their own little like influencer people on the ground and just like marching people and going, we're going to march with the police now. This isn't about us, we're all in this together or whatever. And 2020 ended. The George Floyd uprising fucking ended, and it failed in many ways. So that's true. But the other thing about this that I want to say that I think is important is that I'm sure there were most of the No Kings rallies around the country and even around other parts of the city, honestly, were just an exercise in meaningless, peaceful protest, signing, and it's exactly what they want you to do. Oh, fuck. And I'm sure that a lot of that functioned in a feckless way that made people feel like they protested, and then they went home and nothing happened, and that's bad, right? I saw bougie-ass old people all over the city doing this. It's enough to make you really frustrated as a leftist. But the main one that they did yesterday was at City Hall, and the police shot them. Like, they came down on those horse cops the way they do every single day down there, and they shot a bunch of people who showed up with signs that said, I want to be at brunch right now, and Orange Man is bad, and stuff like that. And, every leftist I know, I think almost every leftist in America, unless you're some kind of weird red diaper baby, or you happen to be one of the fabled, reactionaries that flip sides or whatever, and even in that case, I think it still really applies. Everyone starts off as a liberal.
I did have a roommate who was raised Republican and then went straight to anarchist. But other than that, yeah, I don't know anybody else.
I know anarchists like that. That's more of an anarchist thing because we hate the fucking government.
Yeah, true.
And so it does happen. But even Republicans are under the umbrella of capital L liberalism. Like, we have one system in this country and two parties. They're just kind of like ideologically, a little different, but they're not like the massive case of capital L liberalism is both Republican and Democrat. So you're going to start off in that pool somewhere and then become radicalized. And if you got shot at by the cops yesterday, you might go home and start talking to people and go, what the fuck? You might be questioning some of these things that were presented as a given. I mean, the advertisements for this No Kings thing, I think, were presented as like an argument that peaceful protest works and that they won't shoot at you, and the cops love shooting at people, so they fucking shot at them. And I think this is a moment that someone's going to come out of, and it's going to be the start of a journey where they become more on our side. And I think the reason that was able to happen is actually because the people that put this stuff on don't understand the distinction between leftists and liberals. They set the conditions for radicalization in a weird way, in my opinion. And we should take advantage of that. And people have gone out to these No Kings things and like tabled and talked about Palestine and stuff. Get them right there where they think they're protesting. They think we're on the same side, and talk to them about these issues that they don't understand. And maybe I'm naive here. Maybe I believe too much in propaganda and stuff, but I think that's like a prime flashpoint for actually waking someone up. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen in a moment like that, I think. So, yeah, no, you should make fun of these rallies for what they are, but you should also go to them and intervene, in my opinion. And you shouldn't blindly, you don't sign up for the RSVP and don't go fucking hang out and sing Kumbaya with these people. Like, have a moment. This is where we intervene and guide things in the right direction.
Yeah. On the protest point, though, aren't there some occasions where it doesn't kind of depend on what you want to accomplish, or on the arrest question? Because, like, I remember during the Gaza protest, that was a thing in New York several times outside of Chuck Schumer's house, and then in Penn Station, people sat down and got arrested. But I don't know. I think it kind of maybe depends on like what you're trying to accomplish at a given event.
I think that that's true. There are there are situations where flooding the jails has been a thing in history and in recent times. And if you can do that, if you're not gonna get fucking deported or something like that, I think there's definitely a case to be made. I just don't think that what they were doing at the No Kings rally had that figured out at all. Like, I don't think they thought they were going to get arrested. They weren't offering people like stuff like jail support and like plans for if you do get arrested.
Yeah.
This is just a fairy tale that, people like who believe in the propaganda they put out on corporate media about how like Martin Luther King said to do this, and then they never tell you anything else he said about any of this. This is just the end point of it. And it's actually very dangerous to listen to somebody like that who hasn't educated themselves just come up with this idea like you should go get arrested or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, no, that's a good point. And there are things where you maybe you will get arrested, and maybe you can help by being more at risk like that. There's a lot of information out there, though, if that's the route you're going to choose. There are a lot of different things you can do right now. There's also been a lot of discourse about this with regards to like whether we should all be in one spot. And I think there's a really good point that's being made by like, I'm sorry. I know we're all always arguing about all of the different tendencies, but I'm feeling so fucking anarchistic these days. And like the decentralized nature of this is proving to be such an effective weapon. And someone who is a very smart anarchist thinker said something the other day that I think is a good plan, and maybe someone with a little bit more organization should put the fucking word out, because it's not really getting out. So, you can see how these things all need each other. But they were talking about how like all of this has been centered in downtown LA around all the federal buildings and stuff like that, and City Hall. And that seems to be like the main point. And there have been more successful like protests like this, where instead of having 10,000 people in one part of a big city, you have 1,000 people in 10 different parts of the big city, and it exhausts the police department more. And I think that's something that people should look into, especially if you don't live near this shit. There's probably stuff popping off around you, and maybe you can help organize people out in those different parts of the cities, because they also don't have curfews everywhere else. They only have them at the main fucking center one. So the front should be moving all over the place, I think. In a place like LA, that's very possible because so many people live all in these different like little cities within a city or whatever. Something else you can do, there's a lot of things you can do. One of my favorite things that has popped up in this particular round of protests is it's called No Sleep for ICE. And basically there is a group of protesters, an organization of protesters that has figured out where ICE is staying, what hotels they're staying at. And hey, if you aren't free at the same time as everyone, right? If you work during the day when everyone's in the streets and you're free at night, you can go out to these things, look into them, look into how to do this safely. I don't know. We're all still figuring out, right now. But one of the things people are doing is just making a fuck ton of noise outside of the hotels where we know they're keeping ICE and they're staying. And, think about it. Like, it makes sense, right? It's pretty easy to just make them bad at their jobs and stuff. And if you're loud and annoying, it's something you can do to help. Like people are out there playing their fucking musical instruments and stuff and doing all sorts of shit. And I have some ideas for something that might work at one of these things, but we'll talk about that later. So, anyways, that's my reporting from here in LA. Let's talk about what else is going on in the country.
Yes, well, yeah, we do a lot of bi-coastal New York, LA, but we have the third most important place in America, Minnesota, is in the news now.
Oh yeah,
The
Minnesota mentioned.
Minnesota people are, I'm sure people are doing that meme. I sometimes joke if Osama bin Laden had like an aunt in Winona, Minnesota, like that would be the headline on the day after 9/11 for like the Star Tribune and Pioneer Press. But yes, a light segue into a sad and disturbing topic, but a dude in a mask, in like a bald mask.
He looks like the fucking, remember the old Six Flags commercials where they have that fake old man break dancing to Venga Boys?
Yes. Yeah, it looks like him. And he was also dressed as a cop. And for a while, it wasn't clear if he was. People just assumed, well, that must have been someone impersonating a cop, despite all the deranged cops who do stuff like that. But he showed up to a state representative's home in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, and unfortunately killed her and her husband. And then he drove to a state senator's home and shot at him and his spouse. They're on life support now. They survived, but the Representative Melissa Hoffman and her husband died. Yeah, so the DFL is that's the Democratic Party in Minnesota. They've had like this weird power sharing agreement, and it's not clear if this is totally related to the shooting. We still don't really know the motive. But basically DFL controlled Minnesota for a while, and they passed a lot of stuff a couple years ago, and then more recently, the Republicans did a little bit better in the state house, and so they were kind of like trying to take control without actually having it. There was a temporary vacancy for a couple seats, and eventually they cut a deal, and so they have this odd, like nobody's in charge with the Minnesota House of Representatives, and this woman had been the Speaker of the House when the Democrats were clearly in charge, and this guy killed her, which doesn't feel like a coincidence totally, but he had a list in his car of a bunch of like pro-abortion people or pro-choice people, and also had some No Kings stuff,
Oh my God.
like a poster or something.
It's a
I don't
big
know. Yeah. But that, of course, is now being used to Senator Mike Lee. I just saw a tweet from a U.S. senator who's like saying, "Well, this is what the No Kings movement is doing. Is they're inspiring people to go and kill politicians, which is just absurd." But yeah, they're already trying to say that this is a left-wing thing, even though clearly we don't know what was going on with this guy. I don't think he was a leftist, certainly. He was, and Tim Walz, who's the subject of many a right-wing conspiracy, is now being blamed for this because he technically did appoint this guy whose name is Vance Bolter, 57 years old. He appointed him to the Workforce Development Board in 2016 and then reappointed him in 2019. And he's the husband of a woman who created a security services company. He lived in North Minneapolis and had like housemates there, but there's also like an address in Green Isle, Minnesota, and worked in security basically. Um, the website for the company says they provide armed security for property and events, and there's a like an SUV that looks like a police vehicle. So, yeah, maybe he was wearing a like uniform for his job, and people just assumed he was trying to look like a cop. Um, but it's a very weird situation. He's still at large now. Um, we don't totally know what's going to happen, but yeah, it's yeah, I don't know why Minnesota, of all places, is where this happens. But I mean, the abortion angle is interesting because, as we covered on the show a couple years ago when Roe v. Wade was overturned, there's a long history of this type of violence against abortion providers, against the pro-choice movement, more so the providers themselves, and that kind of ended when the pro-life, anti-abortion movement got more control of the courts, because then they're like, I guess we don't really need to do this anymore. So if he is doing this because of abortion, that's like a very odd development because, Trump is president and they've gotten most of what they wanted. They haven't been able to completely ban abortion, but they at least got Roe v. Wade overturned. So why are you shooting people still? I it's possibly Trump is galvanizing people. There's obviously the government is getting more bold in cracking down on protesters, and that maybe emboldens Trump supporters. It's also possible that this guy is like the attempted assassin for Trump last summer, who is just kind of incoherent and had some mental illness stuff going on. But we'll see.
A Trump fan who decided Trump went against him in some way, violated his parasocial bond with him. It's my theory on a lot of those assassins. Maybe he was worried that a king was going to be born, and he would be pro-abortion if that was the case. Never
Yeah.
mind. Throw that one in the trash. Also, the other thing I want to say about the no kings thing is just ideologically, like I think the way that they're kind of framing it as this like anti-dictatorship, anti-monarchist sort of thing is also it's a break from us. It's advantageous to the Democrats and to like liberals in that it doesn't even use the language that Bernie and AOC use, which is oligarchy, which does kind of push things in the right direction of understanding that it's groups of powerful interests and not just one person that's doing, a great man theory.
Mhm.
Look at all this. But it also just it keeps it it reduces things to that in a way that distracts from the fact that if you really understand this, the reason Trump exists is because of like capitalists, corporations, and stuff like that. And capitalism is the reason those things exist, which is what like a socialist, communist, or anarchist rally is going to explain in its messaging or whatever. So the king thing is like it's liberal and cringe, and we need to like get away from it. But it's not to say that he's not a fucking like a power hungry idiot, and Orange Man is bad. It's just that it's reducing things to that is kind of like the problem. But anyways, that's all I had left to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this guy, he's still at large. It's not too late for him to, I'm not saying he should do this, but it's not too late for him to take out Trump if he is genuinely a confused and crazy individual.
Keep going.
Yeah.
He seems like, I mean, I don't know because like this is still like unknown and stuff, but from reading about him, he kind of strikes me as like a weird like one of those like private like rent-a-cop type
Yeah.
guys, like front range patrol type shit. Because him and his wife like ran a company like that together, and I think I read something today, like a little while ago, that they arrested her and she had a bunch of weird, security shit in her like car because that's what they do. But the psychology of those people is kind of more like bottom right quadrant. It's like weird, like libertarian, like
Yeah.
people that are so against authority they want to be the cops because if the cop isn't a state actor, it's like privatized, then somehow that works out better in their philosophy or whatever. And those people are fucking weird and they do weird stuff.
Right. Yeah, apparently they worked in parts of the Middle East and Africa, and then also Minnesota. Um, interestingly, uh,
It's like they should just call their fucking thing privatized imperial boomerang. You know, like we go over
yeah,
there, we come back here, and we're not the government.
right.
You have to buy us.
But he was maybe doing some missionary work or something. Tony sent us this this video of him uh somewhere. I don't know where this is from, but he's like dancing around and chanting into this microphone, and he's just like really amped up about God. So it seems like maybe he had the Holy Spirit in him, or so he thought when he did this, because he not only did he like kill and shoot two politicians, he also shot at the cops who came. They saw there's, as according to Minpost, the police came and encountered what appeared to be a police vehicle. So he did have a police car. And a man dressed as an officer at the door. He was leaving the house. The officers confronted him, and he immediately fires back on them. They exchange gunfire, and then he retreats back in the home and escapes on foot. So he got away with this on like by running. Essentially, he didn't even do like a getaway drive, and he immediately just starts shooting back at the police officers instead of like trying to come up with some crazy excuse and being like, "Oh, I'm actually a cop from two suburbs over." I guess I don't know if they would have seen through that or not, but
This is maybe what's going on here. Is this is what you get when you have like small business mom and pop version of like Black Rock or something like that, or Blackwater, like privatized military stuff, but like people that are like, I could do it too, like with a small business loan or whatever, and that's just psychologically how you end up where this guy is. There's a lot of like, I bet you're wondering how I got here going on in this story.
right.
But whether or not, whether or not it was intentional for him to look like a cop, I think is interesting because, you're right to be skeptical of narratives that just go off because everyone online gets into groupthink about that sort of stuff and then they get away from the truth, and that's bad. I don't know. Maybe he just looks like that because it's his weird job he made for himself. But, it's also possible that he knew that he wouldn't be stopped as easily if he was dressed like a cop. Either way, it does put something into stark like reality, makes something blatantly obvious, which is that people can get away with stuff like that if they dress like cops, and there's increasingly this legislation trying to dismantle like the rights you have, like the right to ask for a warrant and stuff like that. With like ICE and the police and stuff like that. And everyone should like know your rights and know that you can demand a warrant in these situations, even though it sounds like they're trying to do away with that. But it's putting us into a situation where the person, you reasonably can't even assume it's really ICE if they come to your door, or really the police.
Yeah.
Given stuff like this. So it's all the more reason to kind of resist. And I think it's a good reason to give them when they won't show you one is, hey, how do I know you're not some fucking lunatic with a gun that's going to kill me like happened yesterday,
Right. Yeah. People should be careful, definitely. But this is all happening in the backdrop of Trump having a big military parade. Did you see any of the footage from this thing?
Well, actually, Anders, when I was a young boy, my father took me to see a Trump parade. Those are the opening lines to the My Chemical Romance song "Black Parade." If you're not laughing, Anders. When I was a young boy, you ever heard this?
I think I've heard it at least once, but not enough to penetrate the memory.
I like to imagine this is the one he went to, and this is what made him so sad. The guy from My Chemical Romance, that's Joe Rogan's cousin. I saw it. A friend of a mufo of mine on Twitter referred to it as the I have a friend that's Black Parade, which I think is very clever. Because it was all just weird MAGA people, but it wasn't very many people. That's the story, right? For Donald Trump's birthday, no one came to it. That's very funny.
Yeah, because it doubled as a birthday parade. He tried to do something like this in his last term, and the military was kind of like, yeah, we're not. I think they're like steeped in some kind of capital L liberal tradition that they're not supposed to do stuff like this. So they're like, no, thanks, sir, we can't really do that. And now everything's been Trumpified, and so he's acquiesced a lot of American institutions to his whims, and they went along with it. Um, Interestingly, there have been parades like this. In '91, there was in the like not that distant past. In 1991, after the Gulf War, in New York City, they had a big march that went through like Times Square, and had like certain goose stepping soldiers and stuff. Um, but this one was fun. I watched some of it. They had soldiers from what they said was every conflict the U.S. has been involved in. That is not true. I was disappointed that there's no War of 1812. There's no Mexican-American War. And a lot of the smaller operations, Grenada, Panama, uh, Somalia, Operation Restore Hope, those were left off too. It was really just Revolutionary War, Civil War. They did have World War One, which I'm not I don't want to say I'm a fan of World War One because it was an insane war. But I at least got to see those guys. That was cool. I'm a fan of learning about it. And then they did include the Korean War, which was they were kind of indistinguishable from World War II. I guess the main difference is in the Korean War, they didn't have the like netting over the helmets. That's kind of like the signature visual for World War II. I really like that netting. I don't know why they did away with it in Korea, if they still had it, maybe. But then, yeah, leading up to Operation Iraqi Freedom. And then, yeah, they have a bunch of stuff that was just like the modern military. And they had this announcer guy who talked like this. And they had a band that was like a military band. And they were playing like all these rock hits. I think Trump probably selected the playlist. But there was nobody singing. So it was just the instrumental versions of like Sweet Child of Mine. And it just sounded very awkward.
Why do some army helmets have netting on them? Is it so that they can be a little sexy?
I think it's to keep stuff in them, to keep, if you need like something handy, like a switchblade, although that might cut the netting. I don't know. I believe it's for keeping stuff in it.
I think it's to give them a little razzle dazzle. Although if you do cut the netting, then now you look like an alternative girl, like a suicide girl. That's also cool.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what they were going for in the Roosevelt era. But the apparently the uniforms, they weren't even military uniforms. They had to be rented from Hollywood and shipped to them. But this is because as we said, he did try to do this last time. They didn't spring for it, but this time it's an anniversary, which was planned under Biden. They were going to do something for this, probably not this specific thing, but this time a year ago, the Army got a permit from DC, and they were like, we gotta celebrate. It's been 250 years since the standing military formed. Which before that, I guess it was just a professional military. So, War of 1812 would have just been fought by volunteers or whatever people who went back to their jobs afterwards. But this
the guy
is
with the mask.
the guy with the mask.
Who shot those people?
Oh yes, that guy. Yeah, he would have been a soldier in the War of 1812. But they initially, it seems like they wanted 4 cannons and some folding chairs, and they're just going to, like, I guess, shoot off cannons, which honestly would have been a lot cooler and definitely less expensive and a better time. It would have been, I guess, Kamala, if all went according to plan, would be there addressing these like 300 soldiers just kind of chilling on lawn chairs as they shoot off cannons.
They shoot a coconut out of the cannon. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And then she like catches the coconut and laughs maniacally. That would be a thing. Yeah. So yeah, that was a sight to behold. You can go back and watch the footage. But there was I guess speaking of cannons and police officers here in New York City, there was a lot of stuff's going on. Of course, we've talked about Zoran a lot, but somebody went ahead and went to this parking lot in Bushwick that I actually bike past basically every day. Um, and it's just all these cop cars are stored there. I didn't even know it was like an official. I mean, I thought it was just a parking lot. I think it's some kind of like uh, precinct or something because they have so many damn precincts around that area in Bushwick. There's just like dozens, it seems. But they went to this parking lot and blew up a couple of the cars. Looks like a van and maybe a squad car. Um, so yeah, officially it was arson and criminal mischief, but I guess the person is still at large. It's possible it's the same guy from Minnesota, Mr. Vance, that he did both. But yeah,
Mr. Vance. That's not his name, is it?
his first name is Vance,
Oh, sorry. Okay, that was like
which is definitely like a Republican coded first name.
that's a crazy first name to have. Don't name your kid that. It'll make
This-
it insane.
There's going to be more kids named that as of a few months ago, and probably even more when he wins in 2028.
True. I think I might know where you're talking about in Bushwick because there's a place I used to bike past all the time that just you look over and you're like, oh shit, this is like a weird little low key like lot where they keep a lot of cop cars and stuff. And the LAPD is or the NYPD is fucking way overfunded, so they're around and this helps when you fuck up their equipment, So without getting us in any legal trouble, hypothetically, someone out there might be saying "good job" to whoever did that right now, and pouring one out for you. This has all made me think a lot about the NYPD and the LAPD because I've tangled with both of them now at this point in these big moments, and the police are like an interesting institution because they're somewhat local. Like they're not a cohesive thing across the board. They're kind of like DSA chapters in that way. You can't really judge them as one mass thing.
And that's by design in part because during the Cold War, there were a lot of the experts, quote unquote, in America were like, we want to be the opposite of the Soviet Union. So all of our police forces need to be like extra localized and not seem like they're this cohesive thing.
Yeah, and it's so they can have the innovation of the market behind them, right? We try all sorts of different things and then see, oh, the weird laser guns we gave them in Minnesota are okay, those work in some way, and then the bombs we give them in New Jersey, wow. And the market provides or whatever. It's fucking stupid. When we read how the end of policing, a little bit of a historiography of this that makes it make sense. It explains it a little bit. It's a fascinating topic to me. I'm very into like the like history from 100 years ago, from like the 19th century even, and you see kind of from there how a lot of American policing starts off in these like weird old towns in the Old West as there's one job that has certain roles that it's just a catch-all thing to fill. A lot of those are really racist because of what's going on at the time, and then later on it evolves alongside capitalism, right? And it becomes eventually something that the argument to be made to liberals is those police are not a force that is here to protect and serve us that just happens to be a little extra violent and out of control and can be reformed. It is the armed guards of capital. It's their lapdogs. It's their watchdogs, right? That is why the thing cannot be fucking reformed. There's no original form. It's always been like it's evolved alongside capitalism to be the thing that protects it, right? And it has this connection to the state in that way. But I don't know, the stand-up comedian in me has been thinking like, wow, in New York, the LAPD, the NYPD beats you up like this, and in LA, it's like this. You know what I'm talking about? And what I've figured out is, I don't know if this is any relevant information to anyone out there, but in New York, they just tackled the shit out of us and did a lot of like snatch and grabs and stuff where they would like run grab one person in a group, kind of disappear them, bring them back. They sort of was like going up against like an NFL line, you know, like they would fucking all charge you all at once and shit, and use their fucking bodies. And L.A. the fucking like the game really is different. Like it feels like you're playing a different fucking game against these people. The dynamics are different in that they don't really do a lot of this like direct confrontation like that. It's all the fucking rubber bullets. They move their lines by just every once in a while starting shooting and then slowly walking, and it's effective because there's a fuck ton of rubber bullets. And then there's also the flashbangs and the tear gas and everything, but they don't charge. So something to keep in your pocket. I don't know if that is any information helps at all or whatever. I think it's interesting though because it's an outcome of the same system in two different places, and it says something about how like the cities are laid out and stuff like that. You know, New York is a walking city, right? I'm walking here. That's why the cop chases you and tackles you down there. Here, they just bring hella weaponry to downtown, which is the only city where they even like, are on the ground in this way, really. And then everywhere else, it's based on these like lines of squad cars that shoot across the city in different ways and then set up these little lines. And black dudes drive like this. White dudes drive like this. Black cops drive like this. White cops can drive like this. You get it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, sorry, forgot I was going to say. Another thing in New York, funny going on is Eric Adams, who was at the place, he was at the lot doing a little press conference and denouncing the violence. He had a smoke sesh with Sneeko last night, as well as Amber Rose. They smoke stogies, not weed, for better or worse.
Okay, that still seems out of character for him.
Yeah, but they did like a late night live stream. Jordan Coleman, who's the son of Eric Adams, whose room he famously like did a press conference from and tried to pretend it was his room. But he was there too. But this is a guy, Sneeko, who has said anti-Semitic stuff. He's said on stream, "Down with the Yehud," which means Jews. And
I didn't know who this was, and I just looked it up. And the first thing that happens when you look him up is a Hindustan Times article. It says, "Did Sneeko die after apparently jumping off a balcony on live stream 2 days ago?"
Apparently not, unless he was replaced, unless he came back as a different guy and he's wearing a much better version of that type of mask that our friend Vance was wearing. But they did the stream from Gracie Mansion and like went from 10:30 to midnight. The guy Sneeko, apparently he's a friend of Nick Fuentes. He's a friend of Kanye, who had the
Friend of the pod. Not the pod. The Pod Save America is what they say on that show.
Right. I mean, that would be an interesting interview, definitely. But this is, it seems like Eric Adams is making a play for the right, which he would need in the general election. Maybe he'll get a Trump endorsement. Curtis Sliwa is also running. He's the presumptive Republican nominee.
He's every time he's the other guy, right?
Well, he was last time, and I'm trying to think if he was 27. No, I don't think he was in 2017. Yeah, 2021 and now 2025, he's the nominee. But it's just such a funny thing considering that the ballot line Eric Adams initially was going to run under is end anti-Semitism. And then he's like having this hangout session with this guy who's like clearly anti-Semitic. But it's possible he won't run on that ballot line, and instead his ballot line will say safe and affordable. which has the ampersand in it, which is gonna, make people think it's like a spam text or an error message or something. Um, but yeah, the fact that he's floating this new ballot line makes me think maybe he's dropping into anti-Semitism, and he is doing a hard pivot away from Zionism to or away from like pretending to care about anti-Semitism to just being openly anti-Semitic, and maybe we're going to see anti-Semitic Eric Adams from the November election, and he's going to be having press conferences with like um, really, anti-Semitic black nationalists or Kanye West, um, David Duke. Maybe maybe he's gonna start saying New York should be Jew free, because you can't have two candidates like competing for that same lane. That's what Cuomo has been whining about. That's what he will be continuing to say, is that Zoran is anti-Semite, and he's enabling anti-Semitism. So it's they're, but I don't know. They're competing for the same votes anyway, Cuomo and Adams. So it'll be interesting to see what respective ballot lines they're on. Cuomo's, we know, is called Fight and Deliver, is the one. So if he doesn't get the Democratic nomination, that's the only ballot line he'll be on. And yeah, it's things are really getting tight. We're like 10 days away. Early voting has started. Apparently the results are not going to be public until probably July. We're not going to know who actually won.
What? Oh, because the ranked choice is so
Yeah,
complicated?
but like it shouldn't be complicated. Like you have machines that we're putting them into. It should be easy to tabulate. That makes me think there's some shenanigans that's going to happen. I'm maybe a little paranoid about that. But just today, there was another very funny development, which makes me feel a lot better about Zoran's chances. Is, last night he had this massive rally, Terminal 2 in Manhattan, where thousands of people. What's that?
Terminal 5.
Terminal 5. Yeah, yeah.
Terminal
Thank
5 is a venue that also is kind of too expensive and kind of sucks in a lot of ways. So there were a lot of good tweets that are like, you could tell people really like this guy because they fucking went to Terminal 5 to see him.
Right.
It's just a joke if you're like a concert goer.
Yeah, no, I've never been there. I thought it was Terminal 2, and then I remember they merged with Terminal 3 to create Terminal 5. It doesn't look like a fun place to party, but they got so they got all these people on a rainy night, thousands of people who were all volunteers, people who had canvassed for Zoran already. So if you look at that mass of people, those are all people who have convinced at least one other voter to vote for Zoran. So that's already in that room represents just an insurmountable amount of votes. So that gives me some confidence. Plus today there was an anti-Zoran press conference in which this guy, David Weprin, who's an assembly member from Queens, who's supporting Cuomo, had this press conference with a couple of other like local community cranks, basically. They called Zoran a Class C rapper.
I was wondering if we were going to talk about that. I listened to some of his shit, and maybe I have bad taste, but I thought it was kind of good.
Yeah, it was all right. I mean, it's unique.
It's a little corny, right?
A little,
like
yeah.
Socially conscious, like
Right.
kind of, but I don't, some of it kind of worked.
Yeah, I mean, it's stuff he made with his friend who's also from Uganda, and they kind of did, from the way he described it, it was kind of like a duo act, showing like you got like Zoran was the he's of Desi extraction but is from Uganda, and then his other friend is black and from Uganda, and so they're kind of like, we're the two different guys from Uganda. It's some of it's like you said, it's impressive to me in terms of the beats and the rhymes he makes, the act of the rapping. I find very
run for office, the jewels.
Yes. There we go. But the best part of this rally today was there's this poster with a picture of Zoran with a seal for the New York State Assembly, and behind Zoran is the guy, David Weprin, and the guy who's at the rally, another assembly member. And it's basically from a Zoran ad. It's a screenshot. It looks like from one of his TV ads, and it has the Zoran logo in the corner. And then there's a quote that says, "A forceful voice in Albany," from the New York Times. So this is a snippet they took from a pro Zoran ad, and the image is entirely pro Zoran. Not only that, it has you in it, David Weprin, in the same photo, and you're protesting this guy, but yet you're in his ad, and you're behind him. Why are you showing this to us? Maybe there's more context. He was like complaining about having been put in the ad, and that's why he was showing this this massive printout to everybody. But from the optics just look like in some of these photos, they don't have any signs up that say Zoran bad. It's just them holding this pro Zoran sign. So it looks like a pro Zoran rally. It's truly pathetic. Not only that, and also there was like even way less people there than were even at the military parade. So if this is the opposition, this does make me feel somewhat confident.
Yeah, man. I mean, whatever. We've said it all, don't get your hopes up, but it is exciting. The Eric Adams thing is really funny because, like, what is this, like, if he is embracing, like, an anti-Semitic point of view, the affordable part of that party line is, like, is that what he's going for there, 'Cause that's been a thing in New York politics before. There have been straight up politicians who just run outwardly saying, like, who was that guy who's always talking about, like, the Jew landlords or whatever?
Yeah, some guy in like Harlem ran for office. Yeah, saying that.
So he's an interesting indicator of like what space hasn't been taken up yet that he feels like he can grab in moves like that. I'm excited to see what happens with Eric Adams, where he goes from here and what he does when he inevitably loses this. But I'm also excited for Zoran. I saw a lot of clips from the Terminal 5 thing. He's a good public speaker, man. He's had an interesting, like, evolution and journey, clearly, as someone who's an organizer and had stuff like this endeavor with music that you're allowed to have increasingly, especially because the more things progress, the less there are gotchas where you can go, wow, look, I found this person who played music in college, therefore they shouldn't be a politician for some reason or whatever, right? Doesn't really seem to work. I was a little worried that was going to be this huge thing that like took him down, but I think they don't try that stuff anymore because it literally doesn't. No one cares. No one cared that AOC danced on that rooftop or whatever. Either side, it doesn't fucking matter. And he's like kind of what someone's thinking Nathan Robinson the other day, which let's not get into him. But like he said that he's millennial socialist Obama, which depending on how you feel about all of those words could mean different things. But I think what he meant is that this is a particularly talented speaker who's arisen to push that. The agenda of socialism is, as far as he can in this way, in this particular office he's going for while still winning, I think is a good way to look at him, because there are a lot of critiques of him for not having as radical language as he used to have about the police and stuff like that and Israel. And, we went through it. I think this is where you land if you're going to try to actually win,
Yeah.
To be cynical about politics. But, yeah, I mean, he's you have to look at this you have to catch the secret winks and stuff and look at this through a specific lens to really pay attention and see what he's actually saying about the police, while also still remaining critical in case he does get completely captured and kind of betray his abolitionist politics, which he's had in the past. But I don't know. I'm optimistic about this because I'm skeptical about politics, so I don't really have a lot of delusions about having like someone win while saying we are going to abolish the police entirely. I don't know.
No, yeah, well said. I think that's a good point. Also, we need to be thinking about. I mean, I want to try and win, but also we have to think about what the hell is the NYPD going to do to obstruct him, because look at what de Blasio did, basically nothing, and they hated him. I mean, most of the actions they took against him were work stoppages, so hopefully it's stuff like that.
Also, what if you have an abolitionist win, and then like what do you do with the NYPD since there's so fucking many of them? If you actually want to like defund that institution, I
Yeah.
think we should give them their own fucking island. That's something that like they joked about doing with anarch. They didn't joke about. They seriously floated doing with anarchists like 100 years ago when they were assassinating presidents and stuff. I can't remember which president it was. I want to say Wilson. Might be wrong about that, but there's someone who said like, "What if we just gave them this island and like have to move them all out there?" You know,
Not a bad idea.
same idea with the NYPD. It'd be so cool. We just give them like grass to graze on and like you know I don't know like dummies to beat up or whatever of their own families and various things. Cell phone games to play. What else do
Yeah.
they like doing? Donuts, I guess. You could be like a zoo. We could go take a ferry out there and throw donuts with your children at the NYPD as they stomp around
Find a donut-shaped island.
on Governor's Island or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. Donut shaped island. That would be cool. Yeah. All right, man. I think that sounds like we did it once again, coast to coast, as we've become. The things that we're covering have formulated into such that it makes sense for us to be a coast to coast podcast for the time being. We'll get back to other stuff soon, but yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. If you would like to support the show, if you enjoy the show, and if you enjoy the fact that we do it without ads and such, please consider signing up for our Patreon. That's patreon.com/PodDamnAmerica. You get bonus episodes, get to hang out with us in the Discord, and it helps make the show. And the economy, obviously for obvious reasons, has taken a shit lately, and like whenever we have a drop in subscriptions, obviously as like a thing, we get nervous, and I go, "Oh shit, did we fuck up? Did I piss off our ML listeners too hard or something by talking shit?" How we're like all on the same side, and these are just jokes and inter-left things. But clearly that didn't happen. When we lose listeners, I look into the exit surveys, I talk to people, and it sounds like people just fucking like are suffering from the economy. A lot of people lost jobs. No one has any fucking money. I can relate. So I got a little spooked last month when we lost some numbers, and a lot of you came back, and I think it's after I appealed on the episode I did when things broke out on the ground here in Los Angeles. So I really, really, really appreciate that, and I just want to say thank you guys very much. Please, let's link up in the Discord, and I'm going to do some content to give you guys something back. But I just want to reiterate once again that I'm so thankful for you guys because it helps us make the show, and we're not the podcast boom is over. We're not like, really on this fucking tip to like try to make $1 million and become influencers. Really, it'd be cool if that happened, but this helps us pay our bills, and if we're not scrambling to pay our bills, we can do research and go fucking fight the good fight and everything. And so that's why it really, really helps us out, and it's not all being fucking set on fire at the strip club or whatever. Even though, Anders, I've talked to you about that. Please stop wasting all your money at the strip club. I'm just kidding. Anders is a nice young man. Anyways,
I was gonna say Naomi. My girlfriend does not listen to the show.
oh, you were gonna say Naomi does.
I was gonna tell her that's not true, but it doesn't even matter. She doesn't listen.
yeah. Anyways, yes, please just thank you for supporting the show. And follow us on everything. I'm at Feral Jokes. I have I don't know if I have any shows coming up in LA. I'm mostly going to be doing stuff like we've been talking about. And my other podcasts are kind of on ice right now because I am out fighting ice. So check them out when they come back. King of the Hill. That's my podcast. I Don't Know You. Why You Mad? Preacher and the Slave. And that's it for me.
I am at Anders Lee here on social media. Check out Vanquished podcast. Mentioned de Blasio. We just did an episode about him. And if you're in Queens, come out to Paid Protest. We're doing a special Queens show this coming Thursday at QED. It'll be at 7 p.m., June 19th. Got a lot of funny comics on the bill. Mike Kaplan, Ashlyn Salzano, Alexis Bradby, Pratima Mani, with my host Reddy G and Sharif Hassan. I'll put a ticket link in the description.
Okay, no more podcast. It's finished.
It's finished.